Welcome everyone to our free live webinar, which is hosted by Oxford Brookes University as well as Fractional IP Consultancy, IP consultancy firm. We are going to be talking today about commercialization of university research. And it's essentially a conversation between panels, about 5 of us, and we would ask, there will be a conversation as well as some questions, pre-prepared questions. And the whole idea is to understand the technology transfer perspective of, to understand the perspective of researchers on the technology transfer office practices in Nigeria. This is also a precursor to British Academy research organized by Dr. Sola herself. So thank you for coming on board to the webinar. It's going to be a really good, very information-packed webinar. Each panelist will be talking for 5 to 6 minutes to give a general remarks, and then they will also be asked a series of questions later on. So thank you thanks for joining us today. We really look forward to such an engaging live session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So you are very welcome to this panel debate on commercialization of university research. My name is Dr. Sola Adesola, and I will be chairing the panel discussion for the next 1 hour. As Akeem rightly said, is really to understand from the experts on the process of commercialization. And so we have a panel with us this morning who will be sharing their experiences on what commercialization process looks like, intellectual property and technology transfer from their various universities. I'm not going to go through the detailed introduction of the panelists, but suffice to say that we have 5 panelists here this morning that will be sharing what commercialization looks like from university, from industry, and perhaps to give us insight on the government as well. So we have Professor Oyedunu Arologun, who for 5 to 6 minutes opening remark on what was the motivation then and now to commercialize research at the University of Ibadan, and what is the current state of women academics in STEM. Dr. Gibson Areya will be talking about what does a process of commercialization look like in practice at the University of Ibadan, and who needs to be involved in achieving technology transfer. Professor Emeka Iwela from Covenant University will be looking at how commercialization process at Covenant University is different from public universities, and what are some success stories from Spinouts. Akeem Famuyiwa will be talking from industry perspective, how we can begin building a functional technology transfer back office at various universities. Professor Simonita Mafredi will be speaking to us and sharing the UK perspective on a similar project, which is actually the basis for conducting my research, which we'll be talking about later on, to share some of their key findings of women spin-out in the UK universities that other universities could learn from. And so we have those 5 presentations. I will now call upon Professor Oyeduni Arologun to start 5 to 6 minutes presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Adesola, for inviting me. Good morning once again, or good afternoon, everyone. I welcome all of us. Let me quickly start by saying 1 or 2 things about our center, which is the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation of the University of Ibadan. That center started in 2008, and the vision of that center is to be a leader that is positively transforming societies through entrepreneurship and innovation. And it's also the arm of the university that is relating with the private sector in doing teaching and research that are innovative and that are of commercial value and that can add value to the community around us. And so right from the onset is part of the vision of the center to be able to harness viable research ideas from both students and staff and be able to convert them from just being research into a commercial entity. And what we have done over the years is that, because one of the things that also geared the center in looking at commercialization and showcasing research is that over the years, a lot of research is done by students and staff and they end up on the shelf. And then somebody just comes across it and say, oh, this is a wonderful research. And if it had gone beyond that point of research, it would have helped in solving one of the societal challenges that we have, as well as a lot of translational researches that we do. And most people don't know, how do we move forward from this research? We have done this research, we have results, we have innovative results. How do we move away from there? And so the center started with the intellectual property part of it. And so what we did was we had a sensitization drive across campus about what intellectual property is all about, how people can protect their innovations. And that's culminated in the university having a policy, the intellectual property policy in year 2012. So we have a policy that guides when people have an innovation, when it's commercialized and what happens. And to date, the center had helped researchers, both staff and students, to register about 18 of their innovations that has been registered to date. And so we are moving forward. We are not there yet, but we are moving forward. And in terms of the current state of women academics in STEM, we had the opportunity of having funding from from World Bank, the STEP B project, about 6-7 years ago. And a part of that project has to do with encouraging girls to take up science as a choice, science and technology as a choice. And so we worked with secondary school girls, encouraging them to take up science and technology. And beyond that, we also had an arm for the female academic staff. 20 of them, a cohort of 20 were trained, and they went ahead to deploy their training in teaching their students. And I must say that things are not the same anymore. More women are now taking up science and technology. More of the girls are also taking to science and technology. And Dr. Areya would support me to say that more of the girls are ending up with first class in science and technology from our university. And recently, a female staff, a female academic staff, was just promoted a professor of mathematics. And her field is one of the very rare aspects of mathematics. So more women in the academia are in STEM, the science and technology, and they're making the university proud in their various endeavors. And as we move forward, we look forward to more success stories. We have success stories in our students. One of that is the one I just shared with us that won this 2021 Global Entrepreneurship Contest. And he is a 500 level student of mechanical engineering. And what he developed was an e-learning platform to help secondary school students pass their final West African School Certificate Examination. So we have success stories. We have some of our students who have deployed technology in farming, in agri, and we look forward to much more success stories. Yes, we've had challenges in terms of moving from innovation, patency to commercialization for many obvious reasons. One of the challenges has to do with government policy in terms of how funds come in, where the funds are domiciled. But I'm sure that as we go on, we will be able to overcome those challenges. So I think that is the story I want to share with us for now. Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much, Professor Arologun. Over to you, Dr. Gibson Areya. So can you just tell us 5 to 6 minutes of what a process of commercialization looks like at the University of Ibadan?
Thank you very much for the privilege granted me. I would like to share some slides, if it's permissible.
You should be able to.
All right. Can you see the slides?
It's coming, yes.
Yeah, okay. Right. So, yes, there are challenges in the commercialization of research in the University of Ibadan, just like any other third world university. But before we delve into it a little bit more, we have to look at some background information. Well, UI was established in 1948, and we're about 73 years away from that. Has about 13 faculties and 15 research centers. And we boast of over 30,000 students, undergraduate and postgraduate. The research activities in UI is centered mostly around student projects, where you have the lecturer giving out projects to the students and seeing to it that it's properly supervised. And funding sometimes comes from external sources and from government research grants. It's been good for quite some time until, well, recently, things have not worked out well. So how is research commercialized in University of Ibadan? Well, first and foremost, we must say we have a number of stakeholders, and these include the university itself, researchers, inventors, research groups, departments, research assistants, students, postgraduate students and postdoctoral fellows, guest researchers, sponsors and collaborators, technology transfer units, National Office of Technology Acquisition and Promotion, and the public. So if we have an interested individual, be it corporate body or individual, what do we normally do? Such ones approaches CPAC office, Center for Intellectual Property and Innovation, and also the DVC Risk Office, that's the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Innovation, and Strategic Partnership, where the request is made. And once the request is received, the inventor researcher is called to first and foremost agree to the commercialization of that research. A plan is set up within some 90 days in line with our public policy as far as commercialization of research is concerned. And within that 90 days or thereabout, an agreement is consummated, that is if the researcher agrees, and thereafter, practical plans to see that those things are commercialized are set in motion. Yes, it's been largely successful, but there have been challenges. We could have done more than that, but there are some challenges. What are some of these challenges? Well, among other things, it's been found that we have low investment in technology incubation centers, as well as industrial park, because we find that sometimes some of these potential investors, they insist on seeing these things work to some extent before they can fully be committed to the agreement. And where that is not forthcoming, they tend to back out. Another challenge is the fact that some of these researchers have poor entrepreneurial culture. They're not business-like. It's just, okay, let me just publish this patent, get it done just for my promotion, and that's all. But not many are able to appreciate that this thing can fetch some money, some financial returns. And apart from that, lead to the betterment of the society. So that has been a challenge. Another one has to do with venture capital. Okay, this person is interested to see that this thing is commercialized. But where do we get this money to practicalize to a large extent that this thing is feasible and that is something that can bring some good returns? That venture capital is not there. Another thing which is a common constraint is low patent culture among researchers. A researcher discovers something new, is happy about it, but how can he be protected? More often than not, he's not interested. If at all is interested, the interest is low. And so before you know it, some 2-3 years later, some other person picks up the idea and gets that thing commercialized. That is a problem. We also have seen that there are problems about communication, about key stakeholders and this national innovation system in terms of finance, industrial products, education and research, and also public policy emanating from the government as well as regulation. The communication among these is very, very poor. And that in itself is a problem. So, as mentioned earlier, commercializing research in UI is a good thing. Some efforts have been made, but there's still big room for improvement. Big room for improvement. And what are these areas needing improvement? First and foremost is sensitizing members of the public that we have this kind of products, this kind of processes in the University of Ibadan. They don't know. That is one. Another thing is that the average Nigerian prefers foreign-made goods. Foreign-made goods. And so when you say, okay, you can do this, you can do this, you can do that, and get this product, they will prefer the equivalent of a foreign product. So that tends to kill ideas and motivation as far as research is concerned that can be commercialized. So we know that with time, these things can be put behind us, but certainly efforts are on in the University of Ibadan to see that more and more of our products are commercialized to the benefit of the society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gibson Arroya. Thank you very much for that presentation. I'm hoping also that you'll be able to maybe share that PowerPoint with us later, maybe through the email. Thank you very much. So we now move on to the third panelist, Professor Emeka Iwela from Covenant University. How is commercialization process at Covenant University different from public universities? And what are some success stories from Spinout?
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, participants. Good afternoon from Covenant University, Nigeria. I want to first of all thank the organizers of this panel discussion for inviting me and my institution to be part of this program. It's difficult for me to draw a comparison between commercialization at public universities and at CU, but I can only speak about commercialization at Covenant University. This is because the public universities are distinct from the private universities and in terms of origin and their operations. At Covenant here, we enjoy quite tremendous support from the proprietor base and also the leadership and the faculty and the staff. All of us are committed to promoting excellence in research and innovation. In fact, innovation and commercialization are key strategies here at Covenant University to drive research and development. The Covenant University Center for Research and Innovation and Discovery, which we call CUCRID, is actually the unit charged with the responsibility of managing and coordinating innovation and commercialization here at Covenant University. And CUCRID is headed by a director, which is Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof. Yes.
I think there was a technical challenge.
Yes, just go ahead.
Okay, so CUCRID is the unit charged with the responsibility of managing research and innovation here at Covenant University. Like I said, is headed by a director who is my humble self. And the directorate is structured into subunits, and the subunits include the unit for research, the unit for commercialization, and the unit for operations. The commercialization process at Covenant University basically involves what we call the IPTTO office, that is Intellectual Property and Technology Transfer Office, which was established here at Covenant University in 2007 by the National Office for Technology and Acquisition Promotion, the NOTAP here in Nigeria. Our IPTT office, is made up of a trained intellectual property officer, a business officer, and also a legal officer. And the functions of the IPTTO here at Covenant University include intellectual property management, R&D and innovation management, R&D commercialization, intellectual property sensitization, and capacity building for faculty, staff, and students. We have done quite a number of seminars in the past, which include what we call making innovation happen and the research beyond the shelf. The office is also involved in coming up with policies like commercialization policies, and they're also involved in organizing innovation visibility, such as expos and fairs. In fact, last year we came up with an innovation during the COVID challenge, and we were able to organize a virtual expo in which we had over 33 countries participate in that expo. The office, the IPTT office, also is involved in funding support for innovation, and they interface with researchers, research clusters, entrepreneurship center, and our incubator center here at Covenant University. And they're also involved in industry partnership drives to have partnership with the industry. Basically, like has been said by other speakers, the process of commercialization at Covenant University involves basic experiments and discovery. And when there is a unique discovery, the discovery is reported to the IPTTO office, which we call disclosure. And the IPTTO office assesses the invention. And then if it is worthwhile, we do a patent search and then commence the process of protection through patent registration. And after that, we also commence the process of marketing of the invention by looking for industries that can partner with us to market this innovation. And then we can also license some of this innovation out. And we also operate what we call co-ownership of patents. Patents are not purely owned by the researchers, but they are co-owned with the university. In terms of successes, at the last count, the IPTT office here at Covenant University has registered 26 patents, for researchers, and that should be one of the highest among tertiary institutions in the country. And recently, we're able to also perfect our MOU in terms of licensing one of our innovation. And we have a lot of spinouts that are still in the process. However, it is important to mention here that some of our graduates already have their companies. And if you permit me, I can mention the Piggyvest and the Softcom. They are graduates of our universities that they have their own companies. In terms of award, our university has won some awards in terms of innovation. For instance, we're the best university at the 12th Abuja International Trade Fair in 2017, and also the Technology and Innovation Expo in 2018. Like other speakers have said, we have a lot of challenges confronting IPTT office here in Covenant, but I think there will be another time in the course of the discussion where we can expand on it. But I just want to mention one, which is the disconnect between the industry and university research and innovation. This is a major challenge that we need to still work to close the gap. And another one is the lack of patronage in local research and outputs by our industry. Let me close by saying that I know in the course of the discussion, we'll be hearing from different perspectives, and Covenant University is willing to learn from our speakers and discussants in order to improve our processes. And we're also open for effective and fruitful collaborations in the future to improve our research, innovation, and commercialization. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Professor Iweala. Thank you very much. So we have listened to opening remark from two universities, Federal University Nigeria and Private University Covenant. So we now want to look at the industry, because Prof actually mentioned this lack of disconnect between university and industry. So it'll be interesting to hear from the industry perspective on how we can begin to build a functional technology transfer back office at universities. Akeem Famuyiwa. You are muted.
All right, can you hear me now? Am I audible? Yes. Thanks. Thanks so much, Dr. Sola, and I'm very privileged to be on this panel with remarkable people and professors and doctors that have been in this industry for some time. It's interesting to hear some of your remarks as well so far in respect to what your experiences are and where you see the gaps. We have mutual feeling when it comes to maximizing research and innovation from the industry perspective. At least in our organization, we see the opportunities very, very clearly, and we see the improvement and how things could be done to maximize research outcomes for the benefit of the society at large. These are the things where we feel that if the university or the TTO in this respect are able to be more proactive when it comes to when they seek for help, or when they try to understand the tasks that they're trying to do. So when we say a back office, we mean an operating unit of functioning processes, models, workflows that allow the office to carry out its purpose, essentially. And as some of the speakers have already said, what the purposes are is to help improve or to commercialize the research outcomes of the university, both in STEM and in some other areas as well. Now, how can the industry, from one side, on the industry side, how can the industry come in and help with some of the tasks that needs to be done by the researchers? And from our experience and from our understanding, we think it's a lack of commitment is one thing that I would say that we've been able to cite as to being able to maximize the effect of research. And not that the TTOs are not doing enough. We think that yes, there's some results and there is some progress as well. But as we all know, that innovation and technology move at a speed that is very, very fast lately. And it means that for us to be able to catch up, for us to be able to carry on this innovation, we need to act fast. We need to be very proactive in some of the things that we do. So I'm going to discuss a few points as to how, first of all, how the technology transfer offices can set up in a way that allows them to in a way that allows them to have an effective system, and then talk about how the industry can also come in and fill those gaps or help or support those gaps. So Dr. Gibson talked about in terms of preparing the innovation and knowing sometimes some people don't know whether they should file a patent or they're not aware. There is an assessment that needs to be carried out at that level. You need to be able to do a very comprehensive technology / market or use case kind of analysis to understand exactly where this particular technology would end up. And we have to do a forecasting in that respect as well. So I feel this is not done enough. Obviously, when you do file the patent or you have to describe the innovation, you have to do this to a degree. But when it comes to the commercialization of it as well, it needs to be done. We need to do a commercialization fit. Which approach should we take? How should we go about commercializing this particular technology? And we have a process that allows us to create a modeling technology pathway, commercialization pathway rather, for every single invention or idea. So these are some of the things that we believe that the TTO office should put in place, because when you do this modeling, when you almost annotate what you have, then you know where to go about. So I'm talking about being proactive. Definitely showing dedication and commitment is the number one thing, but that proactiveness helps us to look into things even before they occur. Therefore, we have processes and systems to capitalize on this innovation as they're happening. Another thing is international filings. I think that's very, very important. It's interesting because I haven't heard anyone say something about international filing, and we're talking about commercialization. When we're talking about commercializing an invention, we're talking about looking out for opportunities where that particular invention or innovation could be used or is going to be useful. And then we need to think about jurisdictions. We need to explore different market opportunities. We need to think about where this particular technology would be useful. Therefore, where should we start to file the patent? And maybe some of these patents are also filed internationally. But I think filing the own patent is first step, is important. And then immediately to explore these technologies in other markets as well. Therefore, commercialization happens a lot easier because when you do have a protection, then it's a lot easier to start thinking about, okay, what kind of partnership or collaboration opportunity could be set up here in that respect. Professor Arologu mentioned IP policy, which is great, and I think Dr. Gibson also talked about IP policy as well. But I think we can do a little more by updating these policies and making sure that they are being referenced along what's happening in the industry, what's happening in the market. I'll give some kind of obvious examples. Is we have the virtual immersive technology becoming somewhat very prominent in the society today as a result of Facebook changing some of their strategies and just investing in that space. We have NFTs, we have blockchains. Are we trying to make sure that we're leveling up when it comes to these type of technologies as well? Because when we're looking at commercialization, it's all about relevancy in the market at the same time. So making sure that our inventions, our capabilities are being updated towards what's really happening in the market as well. Obviously, we can backtrack and look at some things in the past and how those things could be used in the market as well. But it's when we're talking about commercialization, it needs to be forward thinking. It needs to be proactive, and I think Dr. Ed will probably be able to shed some more light on this as well in the process. Another thing that I would also mention is sensitization training for the researchers and the technology officers, and an ongoing one. Same thing as updating the policy to make sure like these trainings are being updated to industry standard, and they've been done consistently. And it should be mandated as well, so that everyone is able to update their knowledge base on these matters. So I will talk about specifically on some processes, just to give some how-to that we would like to see in terms of being able to maximize the innovation from a technology point of view. So some of the first thing that we do, I mentioned IP assessment earlier on. So in terms of technology feasibility assessment, I believe that that's already been done. But that needs to be done even more. You need to have more processes and methodologies and approaches to do that, to make sure like the technology are being tested, are being validated, even before you start to file a patent. Because when you're creating a research, or you're working on research for commercialization, I believe there is a difference in that as opposed to when it comes to just publishing that research or writing something on there. There is no need for a commercial or a real use case to be established. But when it comes to patent, when it comes to commercialization, that needs to happen. So it's being able to kind of fill that gap between, technology commercialization, or the mindset of technology commercialization for the research for the purpose of writing a paper, or just for the purpose of research and leaving it there, or to the point of commercialization. And I think all of these things can be impacted with some training that is consistent, and it's also very frequent. Another thing is patent market fit. Again, looking at the patent, looking at the product, looking at the technology, if we're to put this in front of an industry or a company, would they give thumbs up to this technology, to this patent? Because we've done the due diligence, we've done the market assessment, we've done the legal assessment, we've done the technology assessment of it. Therefore, it meets the requirement as well. So building up the innovation capability of the university is the responsibility of the TTO. And I do think the TTOs do need help from the industry to be able to understand what's happening on the industry, what are the industry standards, and how can the powerhouse of a university that is such a huge research resources, how can that be leveraged, or how can that be linked to outcomes in the community? And I also mentioned international filing earlier on. I think a lot of work needs to be done. I hope I'm still on time. Just making sure.
I think you're probably
Okay, give me 2 more minutes. I'll just I'll try to round up, please. So when it comes to international filing as well, we need to do a lot more on that. There's a lot of work that needs to, because then we have a portfolio mindset of what the university has, and that way we can file beyond the local jurisdiction. I also mentioned invention, commercialization, modeling. These are some of the things that I'll be happy to elaborate on as well later on, but I'm short of time now. Commercialization via brokerage and strategic partnerships as well. Again, these are key points where how do we establish this? How do we set up to make sure we're able to cover some of these parameters? Thank you so much for having me. I would stop for now, and then I'll be happy to take some questions later on. Yeah, we definitely would need more time to be able to talk about all of this thing in detail. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Akeem, for shedding some light from the industry perspective on commercialization and TTOs. So we now come to our final panelist, Professor Simonetta Manfredi, who will be sharing some of the key findings from the European perspective. A sister project which has just been completed, looking at women's spinouts in the UK. And so Simonetta will be sharing some of their key findings. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sola, and thanks for inviting me. I'm really very pleased to be part of this panel, and so far I've heard a lot of interesting insights into the commercialization of research in universities in Nigeria. As Sola said, the project that I have just been completing, myself and colleagues worked on, was to look at the causes of underrepresentation of women in STEM disciplines in the spinouts leaderships. As you all know, spinouts are companies which are created by universities where the university retain the IP. And some of the, there have been some really interesting findings and a lot of learning that can be shared across universities. I mean, the first finding was how difficult it was to establish what was the level of women participation, because at least here in the UK, we didn't have really data. There is no publicly available data. There is data that is collected from the universities about spinouts, or they call them spin-off, it's the same thing, but it doesn't disaggregate by sex. So, and it doesn't disaggregate by any other diversity. The only way that we could, my colleague and I, could actually get a picture of what is the level of participation of women, which is very low nationally. We're talking about 13% of spin-out companies being either founded or co-founded by women. It was to purchase the data from a private company that keeps data on all spin-out startups companies, and then do an analysis on that data. So the first lesson I would have thought for everybody is from universities that university can really monitor that. And it's important that you monitor by gender, by other diversities, because otherwise you will not have a sense of what is the participation and why women are not participating perhaps as much as men. And that is an essential baseline data that you need to have. So that's the first. So as university, we can start looking at that at our end. Other lesson was that we interviewed women and men who have successfully spun out to see what the differences in their spin out journey. And there were some significant gender differences. And one of the first difference was that one of the most marked difference was around attracting investment. We have heard before about the difficulties for commercialization of research in general, of attracting investments. But for women appear to be even more difficult compared to their male colleagues. More difficult attracting investment, more difficult also to scale up their companies once they have created the company. So there seems to be a gender bias and a gap in the investment. And that is confirmed by all studies that have been done, not just about academic entrepreneurship, spin-outs, but entrepreneurship in general. This seems to be a pattern that in the UK economy, but also in the European economies. Recently, I looked at a report that was produced by a group of Nordic countries. And again, the same problem. Most of the investments go to companies founded by men, and the share of investment that goes to companies founded by women or with at least the women founders is really very, very, very small. And the investment community itself is very male dominated. So as one of the participants to our research said, it's really difficult to get funding from the men's network, the boys' network. So that this is and I would add, women also possibly face a double bind here because they find it more difficult to get investment because they're women, but also because they are scientists. You know, venture capitalist investors might find it a little bit more difficult to invest in the science to understand what is viable. So there is that additional complication. The other important findings is the importance of role models who can inspire other women, role models who also can inspire. We heard the first speaker talking about trying to inspire girls in schools to do science. How do girls imagine a career in science? A career in science, there is more to a career in science than just being in the lab. You know, you could become an entrepreneur. So that is, those women who have done it, is very important to give them visibility and a space where they can inspire early career researchers, girls in schools, and also share their experiences with other women who want to do, who are on a similar path. The other two things I would add to this quickly, if I'm okay for time, Sola, I don't want to take time from the other speakers, is two other important points was, first of all, how the university recognized this activity. It's very important. One woman said to me, many more people would do this, would get involved into academic entrepreneurship. If they understand what it involves, how what the commercialization of research, and also if there is a clear message from the universities of how they reward and recognize these activities. If they are not properly rewarded and recognized, and that also means given time, appropriate time, if people feel that putting energies and time on trying to commercialize may not help them with their career, then of course we will not do it. So there is an important point there for the universities. If we want to be entrepreneurial, if we want to support academic entrepreneurship, and that's for everybody, making it clear how that is recognized and rewarded in academic promotions. So there is much more that I could say, but I think I'll stop here as I don't want to take time from the other speakers, but I think these are quite important points and things that can be actioned relatively easily at university level. The very final one that I would say is also the inventorship. We know that women, there is a gender gap in inventorship, and what our study suggested that perhaps women find it a little bit more difficult to persuade the universities to support their ideas into and progress them into patents. So that's something again to monitor and see, is there a difference there? Are women actually, are they applying for a patent? Are they less likely to be supported by the universities, or are there other factors at play? And that goes back to what I said at the beginning, the importance of monitoring these activities by gender and indeed by other diversity as well, that we can do at university level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mafrede, for giving us the UK perspective on projects which personally I'm taking over to Nigeria to help us to understand the women participation in STEM research. So thank you very much for all the panelists. You have given us your opening remark on various areas of concerns, issues, opportunities, and challenges. We have few more minutes just to go into some open discussion, and then I know there are maybe one or two questions from the Q&A which we'll also take. Having listened to everyone from university, from the industry, and some aspects on government policy, we actually try to get maybe a representative from the government, but due to time, they were not able to participate. But you've mentioned a lot about government policy. And I just wonder, I think my first question is, because I don't want to repeat what everybody has said, do academics actually look into opportunities for commercializing their research? Professor Simonetta mentioned something about what is the university message, to encourage commercialization and innovation, and particularly when we look at gender differences. So my question goes to anyone, the panelists. do academics, from what you have shared from the TTOs, do academics look into opportunity? Do they aspire to look into a commercialization? Anyone can take it, please. Thank you, Dr. Gibson, over to you. You're muted.
The average researcher in a number of developing countries are not inclined to this issue of, okay, can I get some commercial returns? Not in the main. Most of them will say, okay, I'll do this patent, and once I get my promotion, that's all. So many are not inclined towards this idea of commercialization. And many of them are not even aware. So that's a problem. That's a problem. But where they see one or two of their colleagues, perhaps outside the country, made it big, to that, oh, can I try this? Will it work? And they put a step further, only to find that the kind of policies around them can be so discouraging. So that's one major challenge we are facing here.
Thank you. Yes,
can
Dr.
I add
Ed?
one or two things?
Yes. Over to you, Prof.
Okay, thank you very much. What I want to add is that the recent lockdown of last year has opened people's minds to what they ought to have been doing and they were not doing. I've heard in the last few months, people say during the lockdown, they then realized how they would have translated what they had in their hands to something that is much more valuable and they can commercialize. So I think we'll begin to see more of people coming out to say, I have this that I want to commercialize, because the lockdown experience has changed a lot of people's mindsets. Thank you.
Also, can I say something?
Yes, over to you, Professor Wheeler.
Yes, just like my colleagues have said, I quite agree. Most researchers, are not inclined towards commercialization, basically because of the tendency to value publications, more than commercialization of products. The publish or perish syndrome in the universities. Everyone wants to publish and get promoted. So you find out that it's only a handful of academics, who are actually interested and who know the benefits of, commercializing their research that are involved. But there are things that can be done, to actually sensitize faculty by, like I said before, capacity building workshops and seminars. And also, more importantly, like we have done in my institution here, we have also tried to include it in the promotion criteria, so that people can also, in addition to looking at publications, begin to look at how they can come up with products and patents and also benefit from promotion, without even having all the publications. And also then, in addition, looking at the policies you mentioned, it's important that we also encourage policies that can incentivize, innovations in terms of having returns to the product developers, in terms of revenue that are creable from such products. The product developers should have, a sizable chunk of whatever is coming in terms of revenue. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I want to add one thing to what Professor Wheeler has said, that in Ibadan, the patent is recognized as a promotion product and it has the highest score of 10. But beyond that, we need to do something to it, because despite the fact that it gets the highest score, still people just stop at that level. So I think even the guideline, in addition to adding it, because Ibadan had added it already, we need to also add the commercialization to it so that people will know it's not just the getting the patent, they need to move beyond that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to add.
Thank you very much. I know Dr. Ed is trying to to this. Over to you.
To say something. I'd just like to add from the UK perspective, this issue is not, it's an international one. It's everywhere in every country. I think the thing is academics exist for creating knowledge. They have a different way of looking at the world than a business guy. They are there to share what they've known, what they've learned, what they've known. And many of them just want it to be available. That's it. And so there is that issue you have to challenge, and they are there to do research. And all the points that's been raised in terms of maybe incentivizing them. But one of the things that I think is missing, and I would include UK, is to show a very clear link between commercialization and research. So the more commercialization, the more research you get to do. That doesn't, and maybe even teaching, because the primary purpose of all academics is to and that's their career. And so they often see commercialization as a side thing that they do sometimes when they have time. I think you could, to some extent, we, the guys in the TTO office, has to put ourselves in their shoes if you want to bring them along with you to get them to do more commercialization. So it's a worldwide issue. And it's not just something which is just, I'll talk later on after the break. I've been in the industry for a very long time, worked for a lot of different people in both academics and industry. And this challenge is always the case.
Thank you very much. I know Professor Mafredi is raising a hand. Yes.
Thank you, Sola. I mean, most of the points that I wanted to make have already been made by colleagues. I would only add, just to reinforce what Eda said, I mean, the sector needs to decide. You can't pull people in all sorts of direction and put research. At the moment, we have a situation where almost these different functions are in competition. So one colleague mentioned the publish or perish. So publishing versus, for example, developing patents or commercialization. It shouldn't be like that. You know, these activities are all connected, and where the connections are, the synergies, but that is very much to institution to make sure that they communicate to academics what the synergies are, how they can position their career. Not all academics will want to engage with commercialization necessarily or entrepreneurship, but they don't necessarily have to do that. They might produce a research, then someone else who is more business inclined will take it forward. They, in Spinouts, you have people who remain as chief scientific officer, but they don't particularly want to do the business sides. But it's, yes, this redefining what we value, what is important, how it is rewarded, and also let colleagues know that these options as a career, if they want to do it, if they like to do it, and they can do it in different ways, as Ed from his significant experience had just said, is available. And yeah, indeed, we can see from this conversation, these are commonly shared issues across the world.
Thank you very much. I wish we have plenty of time.
Just one more.
But I have one last question, and then I'll take question from because we have some questions from the Q&A, and that question relates to the data that was given to us by University of Ibadan, that 18 innovations registered, and then Covenant University, they mentioned 26 patents registered. Can you tell us how many of these patents have been registered by women? So that's the question to University of Ibadan and Covenant University. Out of the patent, how many of them can we say are being generated, registered by women?
Thank you very much for Ibadan. About a quarter of them were by women.
Thank you.
For covenants,
interesting. So get to know more about it.
It's okay. For covenants, we also have women whose patents are registered. We have one, and then some of the other patents are actually not individually owned, but you have a cluster of researchers who are involved, and women are also part of such clusters in the patent. But I can speak of one that is owned by two women. They're actually twins. And I want to state here that this particular patent registered by the women is the one that we have made tremendous progress, on by going on to license it out to a company to begin to use the patent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's just say maybe one or two questions from the Q&A because they have been waiting. So this is a question which actually is directed to Professor Arologun. What is the level of awareness of IP policy among the academics and university community? So with 18 patents so far, how many have been commercialized?
Thank you very much. None of those patents have been fully commercialized. They are at various stages of commercialization. And one of the challenges that we have is that most funders, most investors don't want to bring in their funds into the university. They encourage the academics to go and form a company, and then they will bring the funds to the company. But that to come and bring those funds in the university, because there's a government regulation about funding. And of course, there's also a government regulation that says while you are in government employment, you cannot really have a business. So you have these government policies that are working that are not too friendly with people who are starting business, but that is changing gradually because the government has recognized that they cannot solve all the problem. Many people had to support government to be able to do that. And of course, the reward system that has been said earlier is a limiting factor because the reward system is get your promotion, and in getting your promotion, commercialization is not one of the criteria. Yes, patent is, but that is all that has to be. So those are the issues why not all of them have reached that stage yet, but we hope that we'll be able to overcome it. Coupled with the fact that the university itself does not have enough resources to commit to some of this, because if the universities are committing funds, then it will be an encouragement for investors from outside to also bring in their funds, but the university does not have that kind of resources to also support the commercialization process. Thank you.
Thank you very much for answering. And I know that you have been responding to other questions on the Q&A as well as Akeem. So let me just go into the chat. I think that's probably one question. Okay, from Olubenga, thanks for the perspective. There are issues that still need to be addressed on the matter of research commercialization, different perspectives and approaches. There's a need for knowing what works for us as a nation, and then adapting what is obtainable in other countries to meet our specific need. Okay, that's interesting. Thank you very much. And hopefully, by listening to Professor Simonetta Manfredi on the women's spinout in the UK, and my research, which is looking to explore women participation in the Nigerian University, we'll be able to do some comparative analysis and share that data. Hopefully that will begin to give us some these different perspectives and different approaches, which can become maybe good practice. I won't say best practice, but at least we can learn from each culture and context. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, I think we have one attendee raised hand. Can you put your question quickly on the chat forum so that we can answer it, because we need to take a break now. Okay.
I think the question is there. Ife and Yugu.
Okay. Okay, let me read it. And then what are the various stages of commercialization of research ideas, right from conceptualization to commercialization? I believe that question has been addressed, through the panel, quite clearly from the UI and also from Covenant University. But perhaps maybe in quick summary, maybe Dr. Gibson can just very snappy summary of the process from the start to the end to answer that question.
Well, basically, what is done is that if an individual feels he or she has come up with something new, in the University of Ibadan, such person puts together a brief and sends it through the head of department to the dean, and then from the dean to the IPPTO's office. So there it is evaluated in terms of quality, in terms of industrial applicability, and if it can be scaled up. And so once it's convinced that that is possible, the next thing is to see how a patent search can be done. And when that patent search is done and is possible, it's registered. And when it's registered, of course, within 90 days period, we try and put up a plan. Of course, we try as much as possible in UI to get in touch with potential investors. And when that person comes around, we discuss, the inventor will be there, and they discuss, make out a kind of agreement, and possibly see how a license can be obtained for that person to operate. And that's how we'll do it in University of Ibadan.
Thank you very much. And I know Professor Wela mentioned a very long process as well earlier on, but there's something that you mentioned about co-ownership. Can you just quickly, how does that work exactly in terms of equity ownership? Just very quickly. Sir.
Well, in terms of co-ownership is a university policy aimed at co-owning the patent with the researcher, because most of the research is funded by the university, and it's a university policy to have co-ownership structure. Some other universities operate on a single, the researcher owns the patent. In some clients, the institution owns the patent. But for us at Covenant, we have adopted this particular mode of co-ownership. In addition to what the last speaker said, the process is the same thing at Covenant University. But in addition, after the patent, we strive to take the product developer to expose, okay, so that we can see how we can attract interested industries to collaborate on either licensing or buyout of the patents. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Right, we missed the last sentence thereabout.
Okay, I was just trying to say, in addition to the process of commercialization, which the last speaker spoke about, is the same thing at Covenant. But I said, in addition, after the patent registration, we take the products out for expos and exhibitions so that we can expose it to the industry to see if they can collaborate to further push it to the next level of commercialization.
Thank you very much indeed. I know, Akeem, you are from the industry. I just wonder, how can the government initiative and policy help this interaction between the industry and university? What do you think the government can do to perhaps improve that interaction?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sola. I think the first thing is policies, having the right kind of policy that is supporting those activities, what the TTOs needed to do. Also recognizing that the university is a powerhouse of innovation and a lot of progress for at a society level could come from that. So seeing it as a source, as a source of innovation and ideas is also very important, because then the job is different. The job that needs to be done or what they're trying to achieve become different. So as Professor Odin also mentioned earlier on about when you think about incentivizing them, and also, no, I think Professor Samonetta also mentioned this about making sure the incentivization does not rely on just commercial or just publication, understanding that you need to incentivize the researchers, the academics, and this needs to come from the not just the university but from the government in that respect. So I think the government needs to put in place processes that doesn't stop, that doesn't limit personal interest, as well as a society one as well. So yeah, I would say it's all down to what the government wants to do and how they should do it. So it's all about enacting the right kind of policies and giving the university as well as the researchers the freedom to not only just publish research work, but also to want to see it to commercialization. And when it comes to the training and helping them to have, as somebody already mentioned as well, that not that many researchers or academics have the business mindset or are even interested, but creating a real safe environment where those researchers could be transferred to an entity that may be able to go on and commercialize it, and also making sure that the researchers actually benefit from that or have some sort of recognition. It will all be down to policy, because I don't think there are things in place right now that allows for such measures. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's a good, it's a part to finish this panel discussion. It's a conversation. And I want to thank everybody that has participated. I want to thank you, Professor Oyeduni Arologun, for contribution, Professor Iwela, Dr. Gibson, Akeem Famuyiwa, and Professor Simonita Mafredi. Thank you very much for your contribution and your insights. At the end of the presentation by Dr. Edward Cole, we'll come back again and take more questions to look at both sides. So thank you very much.
Professor Dr. Edward Cole from Oxford Brookes University is going to give us some presentation on the perspective of the UK on technology commercialization from UK universities, and mainly from Oxford Brookes University as well. So Dr. Edward Cole, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everybody. I mean, I'm really honored to be amongst this group. I think I have two observations, and one is I'm not sure why I have been asked to talk for 15 minutes when there are so many very knowledgeable and distinguished people here that were giving 5 minutes. But thank you anyway. I hope I can put that 15 minutes to good effect. The talk is about UK universities. And I think there are somewhere around 164 universities in the UK. And you can imagine every one of those have their own way of doing things and their own strategy, etc. So there's a big task to try to cover in the time that I have. But I'll do my best and see what I could do. So let me just say, by introducing myself a little bit more, I've been at sort of Oxford Brookes University for about 3 years. And before that, I was at another university for 3 years. But actually, I've spent most all of my careers in industry in this issue about intellectual property. Worked for large companies, BT, and worked for an organization which was called British Technology Group, which was created by the UK government to do technology transfer for universities at a time when even the UK universities didn't have that function, or most of them, except maybe the one or two very large ones, and worked across in different parts of the world. I have not done IP in Africa, and that's my dream. To do something there more, and hopefully I'll get towards that at some point. The other thing actually is I'm so, in a way, very pleased in what I heard from the presentation that was being made so far. The challenges that are in Nigeria are identical to the ones I have faced in the UK. and the solutions and the methods that you're using, they are no different. It confirms what I've always believed, that IP is a global issue, and the methods are the same wherever you are. It's just and you can go up that scale of learning very quickly, because there are other, you can take examples from other places that this has happened. But it sounds like very exciting things is happening already in the Ibadan University and the other universities in Nigeria, so congratulations and well done. So if I can move on quickly, so in UK has amongst some of the world's leading universities, and of course a huge amount of research funds goes into these universities, and they have impact in the way the economy works. And I've put here to try to give you a snapshot of some research that I carried out, was a desk research to find out how the universities are performing. And this is just data from last year, where in the UK, around 160 new spinouts were created by various universities in the country. And interestingly, those 160 raised investments for university sectors of 1.2 billion. And that's money that's coming into the university, into the researchers, and into the guys that actually have created that spinouts. But very often what happens with universities and spinouts and technology is that they are generally very, very early, very high risk. And it's something that deters companies and investors. And so the government also comes in to fill some of this gap, to de-risk some of the universities' spinouts. And in last year, there's an organization called Innovate UK that made, actually, that made 231 invest grants into universities, into spinouts. And that was worth 45 million. So there's a slight error in it's 231 and 45 million that went. Interesting, although there are 160 spinouts that were created and a huge amount was raised, most of that goes to the top 12 universities, and they are the universities that are set up to exploit technology and have also strong research base. And the list that you see there, I mean, I don't mind if you have sending the slides on at the university, and you will see there's Oxford, Cambridge, Manchester, the ones that you'd expect to see that are doing this work. We in the UK also encourage our staff, research staff, to do startups. So there's a difference in a startup and spin-out. A spin-out is where the university have the assets. The research work's been funded by the university, but sometimes staff have their own ideas, which is not really to do with their research, and it's just maybe, and they want to create a company, and the university encourages them. I think somebody said about the government policy that in Nigeria about not having another job. I mean, there is that as well, but that's encouraged, and you can see there that the staff startup for the UK, 73 staffs companies were created. A big part of doing this is actually encouraging also the students, getting the guys that are doing the research, that are in the university, get their culture to be thinking entrepreneurial. And of course, that has a long-term effect in the sense that they become professors one day. And then, so 391, 3,917 students created companies across UK universities last year. So the figures there shows that there's a lot of activities happening, and some of these things are being driven by government. So here I look at the other side of commercialization, and it was mentioned about licensing. Whereas in the case of the spin-out, somebody in the university have to pivot their career, essentially, stop being a researcher and become a company person. Licensing is a way that universities use to generate a huge amount of money. And in there, again, you see that 294 million income was generated in the UK by licensing technologies across the world. Akeem mentioned about having patents across the world. You wouldn't get that if you were just doing the UK licensing, and you wouldn't be able to license your technology outside if you haven't got patents there. And again, the same trend is showing that of that amount, only 10 universities generated that. Again, it emphasized the need for good quality, strong research, as well as having a good department for commercializing technology, and doing that beyond one area, one research sector and geographical sector. I have put there, you see at the bottom, Oxford Brookes University. We are really a small university, small, medium-sized university in UK terms. In research terms, our research funding is much, much lower than the Oxfords and the Manchesters, as you would expect. But we are in the top 5 in terms of IP generated, and that's because there was a professor at Oxford Brookes that spent his lifetime doing some research on antibodies. And that is today licensed to a US company, a large US company called Beckman Coulter, that's generating a lot of money. And you will see there that for the university, that one technology generates somewhere around 5 million per year. And that is shared with the inventor, and actually is now decided he wants to retire, and he's retired because, well, he's getting a huge amount of money coming in. So there was also discussions about how you engage the government and what is it that drives all these IP and innovations and technology. Here I show that knowledge exchange is a key parameter that the government have a strategy for. They do have that because they understand that it does have a way of impacting the economy of the country and solving country's problem. And they task university to demonstrate that they are doing good knowledge exchange. And they got some key things that they use, like a local growth and generation, IP commercialization, public engagement, working with business. And what they do is that they have this formula where if you can show you're doing all of these in your universities, they incentivize you financially. So it is important when you're doing this technology transfer to have right from the very top a strategy that drives universities to want to do this, drive researchers to know that if you're going to get the next research grant, you need to be able to demonstrate your research will help not just yourself, but the country and the society and the things that they are. And that's, I think it's helping. So I put here like what I call a commercialization research impact cycle. All UK researchers now know that they are measured on the basis of how impactful their research is. So it isn't just about publications that you make, but doing things which can be demonstrated as being used by other people outside, or helping to solve particular problems in society, and it's linked to research is measured. So we are just starting from the research side, and then on the left, the green box there, and that generates your IP, your research output, and I've put research output because it's not only IP that can be commercialized, and then that gets to commercialize. By commercializing, you get your research into helping solving problems outside in the world. And that impact that you create, as I said before, is used by the government to measure 2 funds that goes to the university. One is called HIVE, Higher Education Innovation Fund, and the other is Higher Education Funding Councils. A lot of the money that comes, most of the fund that comes to UK universities are from students. However, the government also does give that. This higher education, the HIVE funding, is money that the university gets. The more you can show you generate income from IP, the higher the grants that you get from the government to do that. And that allows you to do things like proof of concept funding for innovative ideas, and to develop your technology transfer office, and even to pay salaries for people in your technology transfer office to be able to demonstrate you can do these things. So it's a cycle there. And when you do that well, you get more money to do more research and you go further. So the challenge for university is how you can work so that you engage with the outside in a way, and you do it in a way that you don't just turn up to a company when you have some technology. They have their own problem, and they will always focus on their problems. So here you see pathways that are used in UK universities in order to get to the outside world and to commercialize. Spinout is just one. Spinout and startup, as I said, the difference, again, just to emphasize that there is a difference between spin-up and startup from UK university point of view. So there is spinout and then there's commercialization. We also have something called knowledge exchange partnership. This is where you have a company that have some research things that they need to develop, or some problem in their business or their factory, but you have expertise. You got students, and so it's a one which is funded by the government again to the university. If you make a proposal where you put a project with a student and a researcher or one of the staffs to solve a specific industry problem, and do it in a way. So you're developing relationship all the time with industry by doing all of these things. And of course, consultancy is something that I think you have to put together in a technology transfer office. I mean, in our Oxford Brookes, we do not call it technology transfer office. We call it research and business development office. And I'm an IP person in that office. And also in the outside world, these companies, they also want to learn. They've got skills, and there's a lot of resources in university, a lot of expertise, and continuous profession, the development is another method of commercializing the expertise, the research work that goes on within the university by just developing specific training, not for getting graduation, but specific to companies' needs. When you have all this suite of avenues to engage the arts world, you will find that when it comes to licensing, they already know you. So you go there, they know, maybe their students, their staffs, they are already in your universities. It makes it easier to try to do. I don't say I mean, licensing is extremely difficult. I've been doing it for about 25 years in different sectors. It is very, very difficult. And all the comments that you made are absolutely true. And again, even when you talk about spin-outs, sometimes it's companies that you want to invest. But if they don't know you, it's a big challenge. So the path then that we go through, I've just shown this here, starting from more or less research to creating a spin-out. One thing that strikes me about universities, and it's happening again also from the description which you've given, tech transfer, the way we do it tends to be like cradle to grave. So the person who in the university that identifies that idea is a good one is the very same person that's responsible for protecting it, for commercializing it, and take it right to the end. There is an advantage and disadvantage in that. Some people don't do that. They just say, well, you are only responsible for identifying technologies which are good, and you are responsible because you understand the market better. You go and do this bit, and they work as a team. So on the research side, in the UK, research can be funded by public sector, so the government or private sector companies. The university itself funds research, and you can do industrial collaborations. The important thing about this is what happens to the intellectual property depends on who is actually paying for that research. Some of these types of funding comes with restriction, and we talked about whether or not you own patents on your own or in collaboration. If you are being funded by an industry, they would either want to own your patents completely, even though you may have done a lot of work before they came in, they just don't want to share it, or if not that, then it's the shared ownership, and that has a problem in shared ownership, because no one of those two parties have the sole rights to be able to exploit or license, depending on where you are in the world. So there's that funding, and the TT role there is to make sure when an agreement is done for any funding, the IP right at the beginning is considered. Who will own it, and who will benefit out of it, and how will it be used? And it's a lot of negotiations that goes there. Sometimes the researchers are frustrated because they just want to get on with research, and you get these guys in a TT office telling them, well, you can't do this research because we want to own the IP, and well, they just want to do research. Then yeah. So, but having that and having the skills to be able to make sure you get that done well at the beginning is so important. And if you do that well, you continue to get that funding. So in the TT office, the role there is to interact with the research group or students, and we got a separate group for student enterprise, and they look at around students, and that group has people that are responsible for IP and commercialization of IP from research. Somebody responsible for, as I said, knowledge exchange partnerships, somebody doing consultants, somebody whose job is to business engagement, so constantly going out and talking to these companies. Please talk to them. If you don't talk to them, it's hard. So and then they bring them on. So there is all of that. When an idea comes into the tech transfer office, and there are two ways it comes into the tech transfer offices: go out and talk to researchers, and also eventually some researchers actually approach the tech transfer office. The first thing is it an invention? That's an interesting question. Is it an invention? Invention at all cost? Nobody wants to pay cost. The university doesn't have that much money. So how can you commercialize it? As Akeem said, it's so key. And you make that assessment, and then once you've made that assessment, it's not sufficient though, because ideas and patents are of certain value. They are protections. They don't generate things unless you can demonstrate to everybody that actually your technology works. They can see something tangible, particularly industry. And so we have at that place a proof of concept funding from the HIVE funding that people can apply to, and again judge on merits and whether there is a business case. If we look at the technology and decide, well, this one looks like it's one that can be spun out for one reason or the other rather than licensing, then somebody in that we provide business support to enable that to happen. There is a part of that. Sorry, there's a part of that which is also about policy, IP policy, and we have at Brookes IP policy as well as spin-out policies. It is important. The important things in those things is has been mentioned already. It's about making sure that the owner, the creator of that IP understands that they will benefit. In Brookes University, I think in all universities or most universities in the UK, the university owns the intellectual property. There are advantages again for that. In the case of students, the student owns their intellectual property as long as it's not research. So making sure that they understand that policies and who owns it and what rewards they will get and what process they need to go through to create a spin out. My role is to get approval from the universities, because the VCs, it's an asset from the university, has to approve and agree. And the university, to some extent, is taking a risk by saying, okay, well, we'll give you your asset to go and create a spin out. And so that's done. Been said already, proof of, I've called it proof of market, because we got proof of concept, now it's proof of market. Nice to have this technology, well, so what? Who is gonna give you money? Who's gonna use it? It's a hard question to ask because some researchers, they are really leading and spend a lot of time of their lives. So to say, well, who is interested then is also it's a big challenge. And once you go through this process and you decide that, yeah, this looks like a spin out and we need to form a spin out, you make a proposal to the university that we need to make the spin out, and these are the reasons why, these are the values. And that company is created, and the tech transfer job is to negotiate with the company. Here is a challenge. On one hand, at the beginning, you are actually supporting the researchers to create a spinout. When they create the spinout, it's their property. So they're now outside the universities and they are negotiating with you to get the university's assets. And you negotiate with them what rights they will get. Generally, what our university do is give a license to that company, IP license, exclusive license, because you want them to be able to go and raise investments. And then we also give them an option to take ownership of that IP. We don't give them the IP straight off, for the reason that you will find that most, well, yes, it is true that most spinouts, Akeem, you can tell, will fail. Sadly, that's the reality of business. So if you've given them your IP and they fail, it's not your IP anymore. It's whoever's there. So for that reason, we manage the process in a way until they become sound enough, and then we give them the option to take that IP. Some universities says you can pay for the license, and some say you can have it free. At Brookes, we say the company pays to have the license, and that income is shared with the inventors, who may also be owners of that company. And then once that's done, you got this, your job now of this company is to go and raise investments. And we continue, the university TTO office continue to support them and to link them with people that they might be able to go talk to and raise, and developing business plans for them, or with them rather than for them. My view is that the TTO should not develop business plan for anybody. Because it's not their plan. It's when you develop your own business plan, you have committed to doing that. And then you get that investments and you develop your products and you get on the go. So these are just the key groups of steps that we take. So one of the things that happens in all universities is that the research that they carry out is often very early for industry. And I think it's been said already, can't remember which speakers, that challenge is that a lot of research goes on and then the researchers move on, and then the research is sitting in the university's shelf. Sometimes, you know, when the country could benefit, society can benefit out of that research. And so the UK government realized that that's a problem for UK. Very good at doing research, but not, and very good at inventive, but not many compared to, say, for example, USA, that everybody seems to compare to itself. Not enough technologies coming out of our universities. So they create this thing called ICAO, Innovation to Commercialize Research, University Research. And what that do is to give an early career researcher, somebody that's the end of their PhD, or they pay their salary for 3 months. But this salary is not to do research. This salary is for you to go out and talk to about 100 people in industry and business and say, well, this is what I'm doing. What do you think? Is it of use? And they do that globally. They pay for them to travel around the world to just talk about the technology and get to learn about the technology, and then come back. And what this do for that early career researcher is to address some of the issues that we've been talking about, in that universities lecturers are more, they're not entrepreneurial. If you're being paid to travel around, it takes you out of your comfort zone, out of the universities, and to get to understand the business mind. The kind of questions you're going to be asked is different to the questions that your research peers will ask. And in that program, interestingly, this slide shows that about 28% of the entrepreneurial leads are females. So these are people who have ideas and inventions. It's not high enough, and this slide is actually old, so I would think that number has gone up a little bit more. And total, they've made about 20,000 contacts with business. So the researchers are the ones, not the tech transfer person, are the ones that are actually going out and making this contact. They are learning faster than they could ever do. And also they get a bit of training about how you start to think as a business person, and how you pivot your career from research into being a business, into being business. And if you come back out of this exercise and you can demonstrate that people are interested in research, you get funding. You get 300,000 to create a company. Initially, what they were doing was to say, okay, we'll give you 300,000, but you will not get all of that. You get 70%, and then you can go and raise money from outside. And they tried that, but what they found was that even these, when they come back and demonstrate that there is market for it, investors don't like to invest because they think it's too early, it's too risky. They want it de-risked. So this 300,000 is a grant that goes to the spinout. The spinout does not have to give equity, which is a great thing, and it's also encourages other people to invest when they see that the government itself is putting that money into it. I mean, I'm not suggesting that this is a model that applies everywhere, but it's to de-risk your technology, de-risk from markets and de-risk from product development, and that's what these things do. I know I'm kind of gone a bit too long.
Yeah, Doctor, yes, please, if you can wrap up in the next.
Yeah, okay, wrap up. Now, this is the last slide. So we've gone through one companies, which has gone through this, and these are people that develop some cancer technology. There's one thing that I want you to see here, which is right at the bottom, right-hand bottom box, there is a team. When you develop the spinouts, you need to have a team. One person is not sufficient, and the investors need that team. So that's all that I have. Took a bit of time, but like I say, it was a big subject trying to address.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for the overview. I think it was really insightful and very useful for a lot of the researchers that we have in the audience. So yeah, now thanks. We do definitely would have given you 30 or 40 minutes even to elaborate on some of these things, as these are very critical stuff. So thanks for your presentation, Dr. Ed. Yeah, so next thing, I think we're going to move to the questions for us to sort of go through the questions now. We have some questions that are being generated just to, and each one of these questions, if anyone feels that they can pick up on this question, just feel free, put your hands up and just answer the questions. They would not be directed to anyone as such, but I may just decide to pick who I feel is going to be relevant to answer the questions. So the first one is somebody asked, the questions about.
Is it possible if you can stop sharing the screen now, please?
Oh, sorry, yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I can, the first question for the panel, the first one is, what is your definition of commercialization of university research? And I think some of these questions have been answered. So when I saw this question, I thought, okay, maybe we don't have to ask it because it's already been answered in many ways, but I would maybe call on Dr. Ed to help address this question. Just give us a quick snapshot of what is commercialization, because you've talked quite heavily about this. So what do you see as commercialization of university research? How can we kind of give a one-line definition for it?
I think it's the definition that people give to the innovation. Commercialization is when you convert an idea into cash. And when that is used, your idea is used by the outside world. I mean, I said cash because that's
it's the Holy Grail.
Commercialization.
Yeah.
But it also can be about impact creation as well.
Yeah, that's really good. I think so. The way we describe it is utilization is the final sort of destination of any idea or innovation. It starts from ideation to utilization. So until that research gets to the point where it's being utilized, now the reward for that utilization comes in commercial, in cash, or some whatever value that however that value is going to be measured. But it's looking at the value of an idea and looking at where it's going to end up. And So also it's important to also understand the difference between commercialization and monetization as well. There's a slight different nuance about them, and we can talk about this as well. And Dr. Ed, you probably agree to a degree that there is a nuance difference between commercializing and monetizing innovation. Yeah. So I'll go to the next question then.
Sorry, can I just add something please. There? Yes, when we did the project on women and spinout, one of the things came out also very strongly is the motivation of the academics spun out. That wasn't necessarily money. It was where we wanted to do, we want our research to do some good for the world. So I would like to add also what commercialization about enables you to translate that research into either a product or a service that will benefit people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree, 100%. It's all about the value, and it's the impact that innovation has on, and that's why sometimes we're very cautious using the word commercialization or monetization as opposed to utilization as the final description of a research journey. So the second question is, can you tell us the internal efforts made by university industry to transform itself towards commercialization? I think Professor Oyedini might be able to help us with this question, because you've had some experience in terms of how, and you've moved from one unit to another within the university. So what are the internal efforts and processes that are put in place by the university to transform itself towards commercialization?
Yeah, thank you very much. What the university has done is to now have a directorate in charge of commercialization. Before the directorate, the commercialization, intellectual property was together with the Center for Entrepreneurship. But now the university has created a directorate for commercialization so that they can actually reach out to the different sections of the university and be able to thoroughly identify products that are of commercial value and be able to see it through, in addition to sensitization, campus-wide sensitization on the fact that the university is moving towards that side. So that is what the University of Ibadan has done.
Thank you, Professor Oyedini. Yeah, I believe those steps are very critical for the university to kind of do a paradigm shift in seeing how they commercialize ideas. The third question is, do academics look into the opportunity of commercializing their research? I think this answer has been...
Can I just, there's a question from the chat.
Yeah.
There's a question from the chat
okay.
to Dr. Cole. If you can take that, because I'm mindful of time, we need to finish very, very soon. But there's a question.
So maybe,
yes.
Okay, so yeah, because we have 10 questions, and I'm worried that we may not be able to get through it because of time. But let me take this question from. Let him take this question. All right, I think that question is about infrastructure building in Nigeria and where there is limited infrastructure and quality matters. How can universities still work around this lack of resources or limitations? And that question is addressed to Dr. Ko, I believe.
Well, I mean, I think, of course, that's a gradual and slow process, but so some of the things that could be done is linking a little bit more with industry, trying to solve their problems so that they fund you, creating national centers for specific things, and then you get government funding because you're trying to help the countries in a particular way.
partnering other universities in particular areas. So it's really just trying to be creative where you're building these things. At Oxford Brookes, any successful commercialization is shared between the inventor, the university, and the school. So you put money back from successfully commercialization into the infrastructure for that particular school. So it's looking at, of course, the government has a very, very important role in trying to developing this. And what I see is that if you can demonstrate that your existence matters for their own objectives, then you're more likely to get them to put in fund. And as I described in the UK, the government specifically wants you to develop infrastructures and so that you can do more research, and that's linked.
Thanks, Dr. Cole.
I think we'll probably draw it to a close now. We just 2 minutes past 1, and I'm mindful of time. So we just wrap this up now. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you, Akeem, for moderating this particular session. So what's next? Because I think it's good to, sorry, I'm sharing the wrong, just give me a few minutes. This is the one. No, it looks like I'm sharing the wrong thing there. Right, I will just, talk about, what next. Okay, so we have listened to a lot of conversations and presentation from Dr. Ed about commercialization process. The idea about this event today was to try and understand that process that universities, take through in helping academics, to commercialize, to transform, and to translate their research into applied research. And we've heard from the industry, we've heard from the universities, and perhaps some of the challenges and where the governments can also play an important role. So this now comes to what next? So beyond now, we really am interested in to see how we can progress this conversation on the intellectual property, the technology management, technology transfer, and the women participation. But we've had very small proportion of participation of women in Spinouts in Nigeria. And so looking at what has been done in the UK, we are transferring that knowledge, that practice, to be able to compare what is being done, some of the challenges. Somebody was saying we need a paradigm shift and the culture in the Nigeria. My student, who is now Dr. Osman Alkali, did a fantastic project on understanding the interaction of industry, government, and industry. So if anybody is interested in that, we can take that up. But I think beyond now is actually to think about how I can engage some of the universities in Nigeria in my research to look more into the underrepresentation of gender spinouts in Nigeria. And I'll be contacting most of you to try and seek your support to take this further. It is an area of interest to look at this commercialization of science, particularly the STEM research, and I will be taking this forward to contact you. I think on this note, I would like to thank the panelists and the presenters and the moderators, and of course myself, and most importantly, all the people that have joined from various parts of Nigeria to come and listen to our panelists. Thank you very much. And we will be contacting you to follow up on the outcome of today's session. So if you are interested in the further research, there's a link to the university website, which is funded by the British Academy. And I will be starting interviewing men and women in Nigeria from early next year. So if you're interested, if your university is interested, please do contact me. I want to find out, why are you interested in academic entrepreneurship now or in the future? If you're interested in the aspect of technology management and intellectual property and patents, please do get in touch with Akeem Famuyiwa. So this is a beginning of what we are going to be doing together to understand commercialization in the Nigerian context. So we want to thank you very much for taking the time. And my panelists, Professor Oyedunu Arulogo, Professor Emeka Iwela from Covenant University, Professor Dr. Gibson Aroya from University of Ibadan, Dr. Ed Paul, and my dear Professor Professor Simonetta Mafredi from the Business School, and Akeem, my co-host. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you
very much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Yeah, bye.
Bye.